Here we go again. On this episode, we're starting on the wheel wells, the final patches in the back, and the cleaning up the wheel houses, and trying to address where the final steps of this back are. I think we get to the point where we have to finish up the corners and the bottom apron across the back, but almost everything is moving forward and getting this complete so that we can go to the front and then finally start attaching the floor. So we are wrapping up the back end, the ass end of the car. We're getting the structure addressed. We're getting it straight, and it's starting to get a little exciting. This is starting to get fun. You know, the process is starting to say, "Hey, I got some visual cues." I'll even allude to some of the things that I want to do down the road. Some of which don't happen, some of which do happen, and we'll see that as we make progress through here. I call them preliminary designs, and you'll hear a little bit of that toward the end of this video. First half of the video, I'm still holding my cell phone vertical. I finally start to realize that, a better video comes in a landscape. And so I'm addressing that. Again, I apologize, but I'm learning as I go and working through this. Hey, thanks folks for watching, and we will continue. I wanted to video tomorrow, or I wanted to video yesterday, but I don't know. We stayed at the camper. I got in. It was just a very, very, very frustrating day. But anyway, as you know, I made the two wheelhouses. The other one's over here. And then I lined them, box lined them, pickup box bed liner on the inside to prevent rust. And did the same thing on the interior side, okay? And yeah, I know I have to grind a little material off and all that stuff and fight the flames. And I did, and I fought the flames. Putting this in here, just kept an air gun nearby and got the whole wheelhouse in. I built this bottom piece. That was a real struggle. I actually had to add material on this side, and I have to add some on this side. Because when I torqued it to put it in, I had to finesse it a little bit to put it in. It just gave me grief. Now the whole wheelhouse, it's the connection is somewhere in this neighborhood. I think I can see a bit of the weld right there, but it needs filler anyway. It's rough. It's not going to need a lot of filler, but there's little dings. This is welded. There's a bullet that hit this. That'll need fill. I mean, in general, it's in very, very good shape for 1930, but it's going to need a little bit of love. Maybe even surfacer will cover most of it. Anyway, it's interesting because these are the reliefs for the rivets for a brace that's underneath. Most of which I may or may not need, but that's an undetermined situation. And factory wheelhouse, see, it was in there too. The other side's completely rusted, gone, but it was right in the corner. So no matter what, there was a gap. There was going to be a gap in there, and that's just not right. So anyway, when I come back to finish this, when I finish the car, all of these whole rivet holes, I must have put the rivets in after the fact, but all of these will be filled with seam sealer. And then now I'm starting on the jam. This bottom piece, yeah, there's where the bottom piece starts. It actually starts down a little ways from where I thought. But this guy here, now, this is the extra piece that I had to put in. I'll have to weld and grind that. And then I'm going to finish filling this, fit this gap, and I'll plug weld in the factory nail holes. I'll clean this off and plug weld it in. It's tacked on so that I can get the shape to the door. And then of course this will all get capped down to the floor and so on and so forth. This may even just be one continuous piece that goes up here. And then of course you'll put a sill plate on there for the carpet, but I mean just capping it off and tying the floor and all that stuff. Anyway, you can see the liner in there. Not too much smoke damage. That's a shadow right there, but it worked out well. The actual weld seam, there you can see some smoke right there. There's the weld seam to where the box liner was, and just kept an air gun. See, it burned it up. But now I'll be able to finish the inside too after I sandblast. So at this point, fill, get all this tacked on. And then start on this side. And I'll build the front, finish out that door the same way. Finish out the door. I don't know if I'm going to do the jamb. Maybe. I doubt it because I got the bracing and everything else is in the way. But finish this out. Finish all this out. And move to the other side. Do that. Then the backs of each side. Want to get the body, the finish work, this stuff done, and then I'll just do a nice long fill in there. So I don't have a stamp. I don't have a die to stamp out this sheet metal. So we'll do it in pieces. We'll do it in pieces. And then we'll keep this structure in because, of course, you can see the rivets here. Those are tying in the braces. All that kind of thing. So I want to be very, very cautious as I work into that. There's a quick shot of the inside. The bullet holes filled. She is coming along. Oh, and when I skinned the very first door, I skinned it about a 1/2 inch short. About a 1/2 inch short. Got this one dead on, but I had most of the door frame on here. On this one, of course, I had none of the bottom. That's not an excuse. It's not an excuse at all. But I don't know what I did. I made an assumption. I don't even remember what I did. But anyway, this is a piece of 1/8 inch, 10 gauge, 120, 10 gauge that I welded onto the edge here, and then I'll grind it flush. But that's what you got to do. Going to have to come back and get all the gaps the same anyway. That'll be substantially easier. You can do that with wire, coat hangers, you know, all that kind of thing. Yeesh, got a lot of work to do here. This door's got to come down. That door's got to go up. And that is a function of the accident, but I use the factory hinge locations, but that's no big deal. This guy is actually pointing to the sky, and that guy is actually pointing to the ground. So back in the day, I could shim this and shim that and that, and it ain't going to take a lot to move that 2 feet. You know, it isn't going to take a lot of shim. But the fact of the matter is, that's to be determined, because I think I'm going to do hidden hinges. And once I do hidden hinges, those go away, and then I just line the doors up to where I want them. Okay. Until next time. Okay, I do have a fan on in the background, but I did get the door finished out. This is rough cut still, but really follows nice. Cleaned it up. View's nice. I do have the clamp on, so I'm not going to take that off. But then I did finish out the interior too. And now it's off to the other side to get that in. Worked a lot on this corner, built it out. This had to be hammered out a little bit to get that radius back in, like this side. And now
we'll start building this one out. Fortunately, I got the radius on the door, so we'll be okay. If you look at the back of the car here, that floor is, I mean, it's crumbled, but it's not sagging anymore. It's actually where it needs to be. Not. Sheet metal not in yet. But this side is now rigid. So, this guy here, he was cracked out. All cracked out. And the support underneath wasn't holding it. So, grab the piece of 10 gauge. This is 14 gauge. And why did I use 10 instead of 14? Because I had 10 and I didn't have 14. So what I did is I overlapped this plate to the floor, tied it in here. It's plug welded. You can kind of see the plug welds, but I ground them. There's one, there's one, there's one. Across the inner structure, it's plug welded to that, and then plug welded, and then I stitch it because I don't want water getting behind it. Ground the stitches, but to flush with this because that inner fender's got to come into here. Laid this over before I installed it. Seam welded this, fish plate behind it, plug welded and seam welded, or edge welded. And this will all get ground, and then I'll finish weld this down to here when I can crawl inside. But at this point, and put weight on the floor. At this point, it's time to put the inner fender in, and he is sitting right there. Going in for the night. Not much change there. But this has. Started tacking here, and started making some holes, and I looked, I asked on my welder set for 10 gauge, so I cleaned that up and just finished tacking everything in all the way down. Not all the way down. I have to make this piece here yet, but she's in, ready to be ground. Once I finish that up, this gets rolled underneath the floor. There's a little pie cut that goes into here. This gets folded underneath. This gets folded underneath here. This goes under there. It leaves a triangle, and then I fill that triangle in. So it's all sealed when it's done. This hole here is a plug weld to this plate right here. Got a few weld holes. I did fill a few of them, or rust holes. This one got out of control. It's kind of one of those things where it goes and leaves a hole, and you're trying to chase for heavier metal, and I found it, but that's a lot of grinding. But I got good core material on that. Anyway, these, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know, maybe I'll back them, maybe I'll cut them out and put a piece in. But to that point, I did roll a piece on my roller. Rolled this shape. And he looks like he's going to go in here somewhere. So there's another weld hole I filled. Or I mean rust hole that I filled. So he fits in there really good. So I'll probably be able to have no problem. You just cut that radius on there, put another shape in it, and make the two back ones again. Make them in pairs, make a mirror image. If you make a mirror image, and yeah, it's not easy when you make the mirror image, though. You can copy it, dimension it, lay it bottom up together on this side, bottom up together on this side, take various measurements, but you know they're exactly the same. Then when they go in, right? When they go in, you got a nice finished product at the end. So took a lot to make that shape, right? Because it's curved this way and it's curved this way. This has to be flat. You got to pinch them and weld them. Roll it under. There's the welds in the triangle that I was referring to earlier. Rolled under, welded. Okay. These are the nuts for the fenders. This one I had to add material because when I hammered this in, this got thin. So I added here. So I put this flange nut on the outside of the metal here, so it's flush with that. This one, of course, is on the inside. These two I put in before I put the the inner fender in, and basically you can see the tacks. There's an 1.5 inch washer with a nut welded to the washer, and then the washer welded to here, so that it spreads that load out when you put the fender on. They used in 29, they used a captive nut like that. That one's broken. He'll need to be drilled out and tapped. That one, I don't know. I think the material's going to be gone. But these, all of these, you can assemble from the inside with a washer and a nut. I can tack weld them on. These here you can't because of the front is covered. So every other one is accessible. So there we have it. Nice and level. Nice and plumb. You see my cross right there? After all that damage, there's just too much material, so I did a relief cut that way and you know, just a relief cut, and then pulled it together and then did another relief cut, so I got my 40 thou gap so my wire would feed into there. So it's all coming together. Starting to get a little excited now. When these are done and that's done, that's excitement. 28th of June. I bought the car 1 month and 2 days ago, or on the 26th of May. This was the side that was rusted out, had the most cancer. Finally, it's welded in. Wheelhouse is welded in completely. And in here, I went and I finished all this, and then I found a few pinholes, and I filled those, and I had some rust holes, and I chased those and filled them until I got to thicker material. But then I got to thinking, why am I putting so much effort into the wheelhouse? I'm going to undercoat the whole car. I'm going to sandblast all this, and then I'm going to undercoat it, probably with a pickup box liner, because it's extremely rigid. And that's what this stuff is. Obviously I use black in here, but it just withstands significant abuse, and so I'll probably go with that in here. And then I got, so that's everything, you know, finished grinding, all that stuff. So everything's roughed in, ready for blocking and filling. And then on this side, just finished that right now. So now we go to the back side, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build these corners first, and I believe I may need an English wheel. See if I can't borrow one, because we got a taper on the back. I did buy a shrinker stretcher today so that I can get both of these exactly the same, count my hits on the shrinker when I build the radiuses, because this will come down at some point, wherever it's going to come in here, and I believe it's going to just slice this off to 0. But once I get that piece in and looking right, the concept here is now, since I didn't have the original model to construct the actual shape, I did bolt on a fender, a damaged fender, and I might have it in a prior video. I'm trying to keep track of where I'm sending videos, but they're going to multiple places. But I did bolt on a fender, and it fits really nice. It does terminate in this area right here. So, and at the bottom of the body line is right here, relatively close to this. This is a little bit bent, but but it doesn't sweep all the way into there. So I got to find my mark. And now that I put these two on, this one and this one on at the exact same location relative to the fender line, I'm pretty confident that I can get it in the right spot. So as long as I mirror them, I guess the point is, the emphasis is that as long as they're identical, it doesn't matter what Dodge used in 1930, as long as they're identical. Then I'll come back and I'll probably go up quite a ways, because hammer and dolly has a tendency to give you unknown variables, even though it sights okay, and I could probably dolly a lot of that out. I got a little wrinkle down here. Again, if you go back to the original videos, this was completely wrinkled. So the material is stretched, so I'm trying to constantly find a shape, and I make patterns like that pattern over there when I was building the window and that top section, and that's why it's lined out, so that I can constantly check my shape and get it the same, because there's a lot of hammering that went on this side to get that radius the same as that radius. That was easy. That fill was easy because that radius was easy. And again, pretty much everything, whatever slope there is on the car, and as you can see, it's relatively vertical, so it's pretty easy to get it to 89 or 87 degrees off of horizontal. So that relief cut there was a result of that radius gauge, because this side had too much material, and I think it's continuing down here. And rather than pushing it down and trying to form, I think I'll just go up higher with the piece. No matter what, I have to stitch the entire distance. So that's the current plan. So without further ado, we are sitting on a 1930 Dodge sedan that almost is in a position to have sheet metal ready for finishing. I will, of course I'll get the cowl, but again, I will finish out the sheet metal, plug the remaining holes in it, and start with a bare, clean, relatively straight carcass. And then from there, I'm going to get the frame. And the frame that I'm interested in is 43 inches wide. And at the floor, this is 47 inches wide. And I'm not going to run the frame, and it narrows to 30 inches. It's a B2600 Mazda truck. And the 30 inches is I'm copacetic with, but the 43 I'd like it to tuck under a little bit more, and I'll build brackets out of the frame for the body mounts. And actually, to be honest with you, I never really did measure here. And yeah, so we're 33 inches. The frame centers on the two holes would be on the center line of this, so just roughly from the inside to outside is 31 inches. So I've plated it though. This is plated because I wanted a reference off of this. This is a 1/4 inch, so I stuck 1/4 inch plate in there. You can see just plasma cut out a plate. and weld it in various locations, and then plug welded it from the top, and I see that I only spot welded that, so I got to finish that, but I'll check it all over. I got to reconstruct that corner, but I'm really considering, because it's going to be independent front suspension, widening the car out 9 inches. And what that'll do for me is offer a lot more flexibility on the frame. Again, putting an ear out to grab all the frame holes in it, or making new ones. But I mean, I like the locations they used because they're good references and they were already engineered in 1930 for that purpose. So the thing is, at 47 inches, you put 2 bucket seats in and they're touching each other. And I have to put I don't know how much of a transmission tunnel, because the Dodge was a very long hood. And of course I can make the hood whatever length I want because I'm making it. But aesthetically, whatever design I want to do, I really think that chopping is a good fad. It's a nice look. I like the look, but I think widening it out will give it a different look. It'll probably give it somewhat of a chop look, but it'll be a scaled up version of this car. So that's what's bouncing around in my head right now, and a good chunk of the direction that I'm going with it. So here we go. 1930 Dodge sedan, nearing the end of the metalwork phase, and looking at the options for sandblasting and at least getting the interior coated, and then the body work, the finish work, but that comes after the frame. But getting it prepped for the light dolly work and finish work. Thank you. Today's project, if you recall, again, I don't know how much redundancy there is, but I made these two identical. And what's most important is that this and that are the same, regardless of what Dodge did in 1930. Don't mean that negatively, but I'm in a blind zone down here. So I don't know how they tied it in specifically, although I know they tied it into the floor. So what I've done is I made a paper pattern, wrapping it around the corner, and then identifying where I need to shrink, what my radius needs to be. So I'm building both sides mirror image one at a time. As you know, I've been doing that through the whole project. And these are roughed in right now. But you can see, and you can see some shadow lines. I mean, I got to bing it a little bit, but you can see that I've got the essence of my shape. So as I work it, it doesn't matter where it starts. I've got a reference, but the key to this whole thing is that it follows this down. It's hard to hold a phone. You've heard that 1,000 times. And I want to intersect at the bottom fender well rail, the bead, and this piece on both sides. Once I intersect and it touches continuously around, and the shape is the same, see, I got some work to do here, and the shape is the same, then I'll weld them in. That's the project. After that, then I've got this pan to make, which will have a break in the bottom to fold under this piece here. I'll cut that off, paper pattern, fold it under, and tack it in. I'll go up probably just underneath this top line and tie it in. More later.